Hey, coworkers.
Welcome to Coworkers in Crime, the podcast where office chatter meets crime discussion.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Crystal.
Yes, we really do work together.
And yes, we're totally obsessed with true crime.
From water cooler whispers to cold case deep dives,
we're here to bring you stories that keep us chatting way past our coffee breaks.
So grab your coffee,
lock your desk drawer, and let's get into this week's case.
According to the Orange County Sheriff's Department, a call comes in saying, "I've got her," that exact phrase. And that's repeated for years after Dorothy Jane Scott vanished.
Always when her mom was home alone, always the same voice, calm, controlled, a man who knew things he shouldn't know.
So in this episode, we're going to go back to 1980, to a case where the danger was documented, reported, and still ignored.
This is the story of Dorothy Jane Scott and the man who wouldn't stop calling. Dorothy's case is one of the most haunting cold cases in Orange County. The Sheriff's Department still lists it as open and unsolved more than 40 years later.
It's a case built on documented stalking, investigative gaps, and a phone caller who seems to know exactly when to strike.
Let's start with who Dorothy was, because understanding her life is key to understanding the danger that she was in.
Dorothy Jane Scott was 32 years old in 1980, a quiet, responsible single mother living with her aunt in Stanton. She worked as a secretary at Swinger's Sex Shop and Custom John's Head Shop, two businesses owned by the same man.
So, Coworkers told the Orange County Register that she was gentle, she was devoted to her son, and not part of the counterculture scene around the shops. She didn't drink, she didn't do drugs, she didn't date.
Yeah, but in the early 1980s, something changed. Dorothy began receiving anonymous phone calls.
And that shift from normalcy to fear is where the story really kicks off.
So when you hear about a woman who lives such a quiet, structured life, suddenly becoming the target of a stalker, what does that tell you about how unpredictable danger can be?
Having a stalker is terrifying. I had one in college, and it was very, very scary. I mean, he would come to my second job and leave flowers on my desk and leave notes telling me he wanted to see me in the promised lands and stuff. It was very scary. The police had to follow me home. They had to nail my windows shut. It was very scary. It is not fun for someone to just show up in your life that you don't know when they're around. It tells me that danger doesn't always come from chaos. It comes from someone watching quietly. You just always there or could not be there. It's very scary.
Yeah, the caller told her he was in love with her. He would tell her that he would get her alone. He described her daily routine, which that gives me the chills.
Mm-hmm.
He knew when she left work and he knew when she was home.
Yeah, one call documented by the Orlando Sentinel included a threat. "When I get you alone, I'll cut you up into bits so no one will ever find you."
That just gave me the chills too.
Mm-hmm.
Dorothy told her parents she recognized the voice but couldn't place it.
Which is why her parents urged her to go to the police, and she did. But in 1980, stalking wasn't a crime. Police told her that calls were probably just prank calls and that it meant nothing.
Do you think if Dorothy had been taken seriously at this stage, before the disappearance, before the escalation, the outcome could have been different?
I don't. Early intervention is very important in stalking cases, but sadly, even then and still now, especially then, but even now, what stalking has to rise to before they can actually do anything about it is so terrifying. It's pretty bad. On May 28th. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and this was 1980, which was a very different time in California for everywhere for stalking. There were no laws. There was really nothing anyone could do.
And there's still so many limited laws. I mean, it's like, well, they haven't harmed you, so we can't really hold them on a crime. Until they do anything, it's really just, okay, keep away and all this stuff. And you go through all these levels. Even now, it's still so difficult. Stalking is such a dangerous thing. And usually once you leave, it's even worse, so it's just not a fun situation at all. It is absolutely terrifying, and it drags, getting hurt and getting killed. I can imagine how terrifying those last moments are, when they're stretched out over months like that, it's got to be sheer terror all the time.
Yeah, just living in a constant state of fear. And she's a single mother, so I think that just raises the level of fear.
Yeah. On May 28th in 1980, Dorothy attended a staff meeting, and during that meeting, coworker Conrad Bostron appeared ill, possibly an allergic reaction. Dorothy and another coworker, Pam Head, drove him to UC Irvine Medical Center.
Pam later told investigators Dorothy never left his side at the hospital. She wasn't acting strange, and she wasn't nervous.
Around 11 p.m., Conrad was discharged, and Dorothy offered to pull her car around to the exit.
Pam and Conrad waited outside, and then Dorothy's white 1973 Toyota station wagon suddenly sped toward them.
Headlights off, moving fast, it passed them and turned sharply out of the parking lot.
According to the sheriff's department timeline, Dorothy never returned. Hours later, her car was found burning in an alley in Santa Ana.
And the fire was intentionally set. A week after Dorothy vanished, her mother Vera receives the first call. I've got her.
And over the next 4 years, the calls continued, always when Vera was home alone, always short, and always cryptic.
Yeah, it just, sometimes he says he killed Dorothy. Sometimes he says she's still alive. Sometimes he describes what she was wearing the night she disappeared. I mean, for 4 years, always when you're alone. I mean, so haunting. And knowing you've seen this person who you assume is the same person of who's why Dorothy's missing. Imagine getting a call all the time when you're alone, meaning they know when you're alone, so they could make the same thing happen to you that happened to your daughter. Scary.
Yeah, I mean, that just screams that someone is watching the house. If it's always when she's alone, I mean, that's not just good timing. That's you're watching.
Intention. Yeah, it's intentional.
And then the calls stopped briefly when police tapped the phone. They resumed once the tap was removed.
I mean, what does that say to you? I mean, clearly, the caller knew the phone tap was removed. So what does that tell you?
I have no idea. I mean, it tells me that someone is watching the house.
It's just crazy to know, clearly they're watching, but how would you know if the phones are being tapped? You'd have to be watching. Maybe you just got lucky and saw it happen. I don't know.
I mean, my first instinct is it's someone in the police department. Maybe not a police officer, but someone within the department who knows or who has access to the files to know that the phone is being tapped. And then the tap is removed and they can continue their reign of terror on this woman.
Yeah, to know that the tap was officially removed. Yeah. I mean, you'd have to have some insider information.
You would have to. I'm not saying that that is the case, but it just, to me, seems that way.
Well, in August... Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So in August 1984, construction workers found partial remains in Anaheim Hills, a pelvis, a femur, and a burnt dog carcass placed on top.
The sheriff's department confirms the bones appear to have been there for years. A fire had occurred on the site around 1980, 1981.
Dorothy's remains were identified through dental records.
Dorothy's case is a masterclass in how systemic limitations can destroy an investigation.
Yeah, I mean, police believing that they were prank calls and not escalating the case really slows it down.
Caller ID didn't exist. Tracing required the caller to stay on the line for at least a minute, and he never did.
Yeah, I remember watching those. Do you remember the movie about the babysitter where a stranger calls and a stranger calls back? Yeah, where it was like you had to keep them on the phone long enough and all this stuff. I mean, it was... Ugh. And it's like, I never knew how long it was, but I was like, was that long enough? Like, I was always watching on edge of my seat. Like, did they keep them on long enough? But not only did they have trouble tracing the call, the car was burnt. So there was no fingerprints and there's no witnesses.
Investigators focused heavily on a coworker with a crush and a former boyfriend, but nothing panned out.
I mean, do you think investigators were influenced by assumptions about who looks dangerous versus who's actually a threat? because, I mean, working in a head shop, and I'm not really sure about the psych place that she worked at, but if it was, I mean, people were saying, like, for the places that she worked that wasn't anything like her, it didn't really match what her private life was like, but that could mean, like, "Oh, they do this, so this must mean this."
Y- Yeah, and I think just then, much like today, those biases exist. I think we see it in investigations. I won't say a lot, but I think you see it in investigations where they work in a certain line of business, or she's working at these types of places. So,
Therefore, it's sus.
right, the whole
Yeah.
thing is just sus.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, so while I was researching this one, it became very clear that this wasn't the first stalking case, and I think most of our listeners will know the next one we're going to talk about briefly, because I think that case is very important to Dorothy's case. So before we move into the profile of Dorothy's caller, we wanted to zoom out a little bit, because the laws that could have protected her didn't exist until 10 years later. And they didn't appear out of nowhere, because they were created because of another tragedy.
In 1989, actress Rebecca Schaeffer, just 21 years old, was murdered at her Los Angeles apartment by a stalker who had been obsessed with her for years. According to the reporting from the Los Angeles Times and statements from the LAPD, her killer used a private investigator to obtain her home address from the DMV.
And he knocked on her door, she answered, and he shot her.
Rebecca's murder shocked California lawmakers. It was the first time the public truly understood how dangerous stalking can be and how easy it was for someone to track a victim without consequence.
Within months, California passed the nation's first anti stalking law, Penal Code 646.9, in 1990. It made stalking a felony. It allowed police to intervene before violence occurred, and it created the legal framework that every state eventually adopted.
And here's the part that hits the hardest. Everything Rebecca needed, everything Dorothy needed, didn't exist when they asked for help.
Dorothy reported the calls. She told her parents. She changed her routines. She did everything right. But in 1980, police had no legal authority to treat stalking as a crime.
And when you look at Dorothy's case through the lens of Rebecca's murder, what does it say to you about how many warnings might have been missed before the law finally changed? It, like repeated phone calls when you're home alone, or when you're late at night, or and breathing and saying I'm gonna chop you up and things like that. I mean, if someone is threatening you, it seems like that should be enough in the 80s even, that it would have required some sort of like, okay, we're going to watch your house, or we're going to see if any weird activity, or we'll have an officer kind of swing by here sporadically throughout the nights. I don't know. I feel that's so terrifying. Anyone with a daughter would be, or a wife would be like, this could easily happen when I go to work. I feel like this is such a relatable piece of fear.
It really is. I mean, and I get that laws don't change until people advocate for them to change. So in 1980, we didn't have the stalking laws that we got 10 years later in 1990. I wonder how many lives those laws have saved because it now exists. But you have to lose people like Dorothy, like Rebecca, and like so many others to really fuel that change, and to get people to realize, maybe not all information needs to be public. Maybe not, the addresses shouldn't be so easily obtainable, and just those things. It also tells me that the system doesn't evolve until it was too late. And it tells me Dorothy wasn't just a victim of a stalker. She was a victim of a legal vacuum.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Rebecca's case changed the law. Dorothy's case shows why it needed change, and that connects them. Not because they knew each other, not because they even lived in the same town. It's just because both women were failed by a system that didn't understand the danger until the worst case scenario had already happened.
And that's exactly why we're telling Dorothy's story, because it matters. Even so many years later, It's not just about what happened in 1980. It's about what didn't happen. The protections she needed weren't there. The laws she needed weren't written yet. And the fear she was reporting wasn't taken seriously.
Based on the calls, the behavior, and the timeline, experts interviewed by A&E Crime and Investigation believe the caller was male, local, familiar with Dorothy's routines, emotionally fixated, and he was confident that he wouldn't be caught.
He wasn't impulsive. He was patient, he was organized, and he enjoyed control.
Dorothy didn't live a dangerous life. She wasn't reckless, and she wasn't surrounded by chaos. She was a mother, a daughter, a coworker, someone who did everything right, and she was failed by a system that didn't understand the danger that she was in.
And her case reminds us that threats don't always come from strangers. Sometimes they come from people whose voices we recognize but just can't place.
It reminds me when someone says, "I'm scared," that their response should never be a dismissal. If someone is willing to tell you that they are afraid, that we should listen. You know, it's just a stark reminder.
Right. And so, along those lines, what do you think Dorothy's case teaches us about listening? Really listening and hearing people when someone says they feel unsafe.
Yeah, it could be life-saving or fatal not to listen. Just someone saying, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable walking to my car. I've been getting an eerie feeling." Like, I wouldn't th don't let that pass. That's someone's instincts, and I think we dull our instincts so often. If your gut is telling you something, you have to listen to it. You just have to. I mean, that's what our instincts are for. Ugh.
Yeah, there's always that, mother's instinct. And
Mhm.
I had a pediatrician tell me years ago he always listens to the mom when they're pushing because something's wrong with their child. They
Yeah, moms have that
that
instinct.
that instinct to know, mother's instinct to know something's going on. Or when you get that feeling, oh, I really should text or call so and so. Always
Mhm.
pick up the phone. Always text because you never know what's going to happen, and that's coming to you for a reason.
Yeah, I think intuition and instinct are just part of our makeup as as humans, and like as women, as men. I remember we went camping, and I was just sitting on the bank, and some people came up and said it was a few women and one man, but it still felt weird. I still felt really uncomfortable, and he felt it from where he was and came back. Like, he was like, "I didn't like something about that." It was weird. The remainder of our camping trip was very odd. They kept running into us. It was such an uncomfortable situation. That is one of the most afraid I've ever been. I remember telling him, "We need to just leave." And we pulled our tent up in the middle of the night. We could hear them talking and echoing through the canyon we were staying at, because we were doing like primitive camping. And I was like, if I was watching a movie about this, I would be like, "Get in your car." So we left everything in the tent. We like pulled the tent out of the ground, rolled it up with everything in it, and stuffed it in the truck and left. It was 3 in the morning, and I do not think we would have been okay if we stayed. But it's things like that. It's when your gut tells you something, and the response would be crazy to pull your tent up at 3 o'clock in the morning and not actually pack. That sounds nuts, but that was the right thing to do. And I think sometimes we ignore that.
Yeah, there's a book out called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. It's about survival. It's about listening to survival signals, like that gut instinct, not ignoring it.
Yeah.
It's been on my to be read list for a while now, and I think I need to really just read it.
Yeah, it's just so
You,
important.
never ignore that gut feeling, because they say your body's more in tune to what's around you than you realize, and it takes that few seconds, and in those few seconds things can happen. So listen to your gut. I think
Yeah,
that's our
it's a primitive wiring. I mean, we aren't running from like a jaguar sneaking up on us anymore, but that instinct is still there when somebody's following you or you notice something strange. Stalking is definitely one that I haven't even thought about in so long. So when when I started reading, and I was like, "Oh, stalking." Oh, it's been a while since, and what a different type of crime to look at. Um, because I don't know that any of the cases we've talked about have blatantly thrown that out there. I think some of them had an element of stalking to them that really weren't front of mind of what we were talking about, but I'm glad we
But
talked
you wonder
about.
how many of the cases might have some element of stalking in them, but it's just never been reported because people
Well, like,
aren't reporting it.
what was the couple that he was a dentist? It's not TD. The
The one in
dentist.
Ohio?
Yeah. And her ex-husband, I think he was stalking her. And when they went to sleep, he got in the house. I think he had been stalking her. Because there was a phone call that came in one night that didn't make sense to the police department. And they were like, well, it's the wrong house or something. But I think there was an underlying element of stalking. But I think with the way things are today, with the way internet and reverse calling and all that, I think that we don't hear of it as much, but it is still there. I mean, there was the case where it wasn't a case, it was just Taylor Swift has a very relentless stalker. He's been stalking her for years, and he's been arrested for it several times. And he came to her apartment in New York. It's like 2 or 3 years ago. He just shows up to her apartment. They arrest him. He's in court. They tell him, if you go anywhere near her again, we are going to arrest you permanently. It's basically like a little parole. They were just like, yeah, you can go. We're going to release you. As soon as he posted bail, he went right back to her place and they arrested him. So she went through, and I mean, you're Taylor Swift, right? And she got a massive law change. I never really looked back into it, but I remember at the time thinking, I'm not a Swiftie. I don't dislike her, but I'm not like always like clawing to understand her lyrics or her music. But I do have massive respect for that woman.
It is very, very scary. And Dorothy deserved better. Her family deserved answers.
Yeah, if you have any information about the disappearance or death of Dorothy Jane Scott, please contact the Orange County Sheriff's Department Homicide Detail or Cold Case Unit.
Again, coworkers, follow your gut, listen to it, and if something's going on, say something.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, coworkers.
Until next time.
That wraps up this week's episode.
Thanks for listening, whether you're at your office, at your home, or somewhere in between. We're glad you're here.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Like what you heard? Leave us a review and share it with your coworkers.
Got a case you want us to cover or office drama that feels criminal? Send it to us at coworkers.crimepodcast@gmail.com or check the episode notes for all of our social handles. Until next time, coworkers.
Stay curious, stay safe, and stay caffeinated.